I'll just start by saying hello, everyone. Welcome to this class. Today we'll be going over on how to restore and repair old photos using Photoshop. So I will approach today's class assuming that some of you will know some of the basics.
Please call attention 4272. No, please call attention 4272.
Sorry, that's coming into the mic. But I will, yes, I will approach this class assuming that some of you will know some of the basics of Photoshop. If you're completely brand new, that is fine. Make sure to follow along. I will be explaining what I am doing, what tools I am using, and all the little shortcuts along the way. So what I will be showing you isn't the only method in editing the photos I'll show you. There are definitely a lot of other resources out there. So I do encourage you to explore and learn. You may be able to pick up a few new things. So I'm gonna go ahead and start by opening up my first photo. Hopefully you can see the entirety of this screen. This is not the main interface of Photoshop. This is just a preview screen. So on the left-hand side, I'm gonna open up my first file. Let's start with okay, so after hitting open, it should take me to the main interface. Give it a moment. Okay, great. So I'll explain what you are seeing. There's quite a bit going on. So on the left-hand side are your main tools for Photoshop. And then obviously in the middle is your file that you uploaded or the canvas that you'll be working on. On the right-hand side, we're going to be mainly focusing on the bottom right, where you see there's the layers panel. And then above the layers panel is the properties panel. And then towards the top of the screen, there are your extra functions. There's separate drop-down menus. And then right below it, this little bar here is basically a sub-menu for each individual tool. Okay. And my screen, hold on, my program is acting a little odd for a second. Let me get back to. Let me get back to it, unless I have to actually exit it. Sorry, Annie. I don't know why it's actually doing this. I might have to exit it out and again if it persists.
Do I just close all of them and open them up?
Yes, I just close it. I'm like waiting for it to subside.
Are you hooked up to the, do you have the cable in there?
I have the charging adapter. That's what you mean. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna open up again. It'll take a moment.
On that side. Yeah. It's hardware again. No.
This is it.
Yeah, here, I'll get it. Because you're on wireless. When you go here, you hardwired and better. Okay, great.
Okay, thank you. Let me share, like, I don't know if it's sharing again. Let me reshare. Okay. Hopefully you all can see that now. We're back to our main screen. And let's see, okay.
Cancel, notary.
So what I wanted to first note is what I have, the file that I have open here is a JPEG file or .jpg file. With these files, these are, you will probably most likely be working with a JPEG file, because if you're working with an older photo, they're going to be scanned. They most likely will be scanned into and saved as JPEG. The thing with JPEG files is they are very efficient in storage, so you can have multiple images taking up your storage space in your computer. However, as efficient as they are, they're not the highest quality. JPEG photos tend to be compressed. They're limited in the amount of data. So if you're going to be working with a JPEG, just know that you may run into a few limitations, but by any means, you still will be able to work on editing a photo. It's definitely doable. But just in that very case, I do recommend before you digitize any old photos, try and scan in a .png or PNG file. PNG files tend to be of higher quality. They do not compress the image's data. And with this specific photo I have here, I will end up saving it as a PNG. I can do that. That's the best I can do, even though I have it open as a JPEG image. Okay, and the first thing I wanted to cover was, we're gonna get rid of blemishes and tears in the photo. And what I want to do before I start any edits on the photo, I want to be able to duplicate my layer. So if you go over to the right-hand side towards the bottom, in your layers panel, you have one single layer, and right now it's locked. And if I click on the padlock, it unlocks the functions for that layer. And the reason why I want to duplicate my layer is because I don't want to make edits on the original file. Just in the very case, if I maybe don't like how I make my edits on it, I can always go back to the original or previous original file. So to duplicate, if you notice on the bottom, there are a few small icons. The plus in the square icon is what adds new layers, and you can keep adding new layers, as many as you need, depending on what you're trying to edit or what edits you're making. Let's see. And you can also delete your layers with by selecting your layer and then hitting the little trash can icon right here at the bottom. You can delete your layer. You can also drag the layer to the trash can icon to delete it. Let me get rid of those. Okay. To duplicate it, I'm simply gonna drag this first layer to the new layer icon, and it will duplicate my layer. You can also toggle the visibility of layers by clicking the eyeball icon next to it. So if I toggle both of these off, now you see the layers invisible. I'll bring that back up. So while the second layer is still selected, how I would go about getting rid of blemishes in your photo, I usually think of it as getting rid of the most obvious and diving in and making the most obvious to the most intrusive edits. So the first tool I want to show you is the crop tool. If you go on the left-hand side, it's like the fourth icon down, this little square frame icon. And the shortcut for that is C. And it pops up. So this little border will show up. And essentially you can drag the corners, top, bottom, left, and right. And you can actually crop out as much of the image as you need. If you don't like, say you'd want to undo it, to undo, you can go to the top of the interface to edit to drop-down menu, and you can select undo. The shortcut, and I would recommend practicing using the shortcut, would be Control Z. So those two together. And you can continue to hit Control Z as much as you need. So let's see, going back to the crop tool. I want to be able to zoom into the photo, and you will be doing a lot of navigating and panning through your image quite often. So you will zoom in. I want to be able to zoom in my photo. Shortcut for zooming in is Control+. And then the zooming out, the shortcut would be Control minus. So I just want to have it steady here. On the left-hand side of this white border along the edge, I'm just going to drag it here, if it lets me. Okay. I'm going to undo that. It's not exactly how I want it. There, okay. I only want it, okay, I want to keep everything else. That's fine. And then after you're done cropping, just make sure to hit enter, it will make your crop. Now that I made my first edit, I want to make sure and save this first edit. You can hit save. If you're saving for the first time, you can go to file and you can hit save as. I'll save it on my computer. And I'll save it as a Photoshop file. Hit OK, and my first edit has been saved. And I do encourage you to hit the shortcut for saving is Control S. And I recommend you hitting the Control S keys at least after every edit or every few minutes. It's such a good habit. Sometimes as robust of a program Photoshop is, it may crash. You don't want to lose all your work. So it's just a good habit to have all your progress saved. And then the next thing I want to show you is let's get into the photo just a little bit. And I'll show you. So with old photos, there are most likely going to be pairs of all various sorts. So for me, on this photo, I want to get rid of, say, top left, there's this bit of a blemish tear over here. There's this obvious red blotch going across the photo, and it's actually cutting into the subject. So I want to be able to get rid of those. One tool that is very good, let's start on this little top tear over here. I'm gonna go to the spot healing brush tool. It's also known as the blemish tool. You can access it with the J key. And it'll appear, the cursor will appear as a circle. You can actually adjust the size of this. It works similarly to like a paintbrush tool. And the shortcut for changing the size of this, it would be the brackets, the brackets next to P. Left bracket decreases the size, right bracket increases the size. Now, the more detailed of a blemish or spot that you want to remove on your photo, I recommend being very precise and deliberate with your strokes. So you may have to choose a bit of a smaller brush size. I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit more. To pan across the photo, you can click on the hand tool. And it's also accessible by using the H key. And then while I need to pan, I'm gonna go back to J because I need my blemish tool. And all it is, you just you left click and drag across the spot you want to get rid of. You may have to go over it a few times. You may also have to decrease the size, vary the size as you go. And if you notice, it actually gets rid of what was once there and replaces it with a matching surrounding set of pixels. Let's increase the size of that. So, and then let's see, I want to get rid of a little bit of defect here. Okay. I'm going to zoom out. So this is what it looked like before. And then toggle on the change, and this is what it looks like after. So it does a pretty good job in making up for the here. And you can all go through your photo, and you may want to cover and repair any blemishes that are throughout the photo. Now, I do recommend using the spot healing brush for rather smaller tears. For this red spot, for this large red spot over here, I wouldn't really recommend using the spot healing brush. It can start to look a little bit muddy and a little bit sloppy. So what I want to show you next is the tool, the quick selection tool. So if you go, oh my bad, I got the icons wrong. So it's 1, 2, 3. It's the 4th icon down. The crop tool is the 5th icon. The 4th icon down is your. For me, it shows up as object selection tool. If you hold down on the tool, you will. So there will be a sub panel that will show up a variation of tools. I'm going to be using the quick selection tool. Select that. So the quick selection tool, similar to the spot healing brush, you can adjust the size of it using the bracket, left and right bracket to adjust size. And what I want to do is, I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller. I'm going to select as much as I can, like a general selection of this red blotch. So hold left click, and you can actually let go, and you can also continue it elsewhere. It doesn't have to be perfect. We are going to refine the edge in a little bit. So let's just say I want to add. Okay. So I made a general selection of what I could. The remainder of the spot, we will get rid of it with the blemish tool afterwards. But for now, we're gonna focus on getting rid of the main gist of this blotch. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. If you selected a little bit more than you needed to, you can subtract or delete parts of the selection by holding down the Alt key and left click and drag across. And then you let go, and maybe I want to add a little bit more to the selection, and you can keep going until you are okay with your selection. Okay, so while that is selected, what I will do now is making sure that your quick selection tool is also still selected, because we need to access submenu over on the top. Towards the right, you're gonna click on select and mask. And then on the right side in your properties panel, this will show up. And you're gonna head down towards radius. You're gonna check smart radius on. And the sliding scale for radius, I'm gonna slide it to about 4 or 5. I have it on 5. You can increase the feathering. There's a sliding scale for feathering. I'm just gonna leave it around 1-ish, and then I'm gonna hit OK. And one more thing to do for this, I'm going to go to edit. So the edit drop-down menu, you go a little bit down, you're gonna see content aware fill. Click on that. And what you see here is on the right is your preview. You can zoom in. And this will basically what it will look like once the edit is made and then the blotch is taken care of essentially, and I'll output it to the new layer. Make sure to hit apply and then hit OK. And now what the edits that we made in getting rid of this blotch will appear on a new layer. So that's gonna be technically layer 3 for me. And to get rid of selection, the marching ants, Control D is to get rid of the selection. So far, it's done a pretty good job in getting rid of a good chunk of that blemish. What I want to do now is, while I still have this third layer, I'm gonna merge it down to, I'm gonna merge this layer to the bottom layer below, right below it. You can right click and click on merge down. It'll merge it with the layer 2 below it. Now I'm not completely done because I still have quite a bit of basically like a residue of what was once the blemish. So now I can actually go back to my spot healing brush tool. It'll be a lot easier for me to get rid of the rest of what this blemish was. And if you need, zoom in, pan across the photo. If you need a more precise editing. Let's see. J. If you feel like you're having a little bit of trouble with making a clean edit with the spot healing brush, you can use, if you hold down on the spot healing brush tool on the left hand side on the left tools panel, you can also use a healing brush tool, very similar to the spot healing brush tool. However, you can sample it. This requires sampling a spot by holding Alt. Let's say I want to sample this area over here. Holding Alt, click, and now I can kind of paint with what I've sourced, essentially. I'm gonna go back to the other brush, and I'll quickly clean this up. Wrong brush. Okay. So zoom in, taking care of the last bit of blemish that I can. And I have to be, wrong brush. I have a habit of using the B key, this is the J key. Okay. So I want to be very careful where I'm coming towards the subject. It's the blemish. So this blemish definitely cuts into his hair, basically. And I don't really want to use I'll go up to the edge as far as I can. What I want to do now is I don't want to use the spot healing brush tool over here where it's actually, where would be essentially the rest of the hair. In this case where you have tears or defects in the image cutting into a subject or any fine detail, this is kind of like this would be your last resort thing to do. You would have to essentially paint in using the brush tool, paint in the missing details. And the way I go about painting any missing details, you would have to sample, paint, and go back, basically back and forth, sampling. And if you sample, you get an eyedropper tool that pops up. And let me go ahead and maybe fill in a little bit of the shadows for the hair. And you have to be pretty precise as well. And you just carefully paint in what would have been essentially the missing details. And the preciseness, you don't have to be perfect. It has to just look like a believable edit. So I'm trying to basically recreate the rest of the head of the subject, essentially. I think a few more strokes. Okay, and if you do zoom out, it looks pretty all right. However, before you leave your fix, last step to do is we're gonna go back to the quick selection tool. I'm gonna select where I painted over with the brush tool. And I don't need a big selection. I just need, sorry, this is where I made the fix. And we're gonna go to the top. So go to the filter drop down menu. We're gonna go to noise and we're gonna add noise. What we're basically trying to do is blend in, because we use such a soft brush, we want to be able to blend in with the rest of the texture of the photo. And so you can zoom into this and see what it looks like. You don't need too much in this photo. So for this example, it'll probably be between like 0 and 1, like less than 1 maybe. And once you're okay with that, hit OK. Deselect by hitting the keys Control D. And so we went from, this is what it looked like before, and then this is what it looked like after. This is the best we can do, and at least when we had the tear that was cutting into the subject. In some cases, you won't have to deal with that. You might have a much more cleaner tear, and you only have to go as far as using the selection and content aware fill and getting rid of any residual blemishes using the spot healing brush. And then one. So the second thing, I'm going to open up a new photo and I will show you how to adjust the effects of photo, the age of the photo. So sometimes you'll have some kind of color casting on your photo and you want to adjust the color balance. While I have this photo, I'm going to go ahead, unlock this layer, duplicate this layer by dragging it down to new layer. Okay, and what I want to do now is for this specific photo, I noticed that there's a little bit of a blue vignette kind of casting surrounding the image. I kind of want to bring out the warmer colors in the image. So we're going to make an adjustment layer. For adjustment layer, while your top layer is selected, I'm gonna click on this half-filled circle icon on the bottom where it says create new fill or adjustment layer. Click on that, go to color balance. And when you select an adjustment layer, it'll open up as like a new layer. It will be affecting the layer right below it. Where you will be working on is in the properties panel. Right now, I have tone, it just defaults to midtones. Let's see. So let's say I wanted to get rid of that blue cast. You can play around with these sliders here. So if I just move it a little bit to the left, it'll increase the yellows. So kind of have an inverse effect on what other colors are visible. And so this takes a little bit of playing around with. It depends on what you want to see in your photo. And let's see, I want to bring up the reds a little bit. And I'll go to shadows and I'll play around with the shadows as well. Okay. And if you need, you can also adjust, you can add more adjustment layers on top. So let's just say I want to adjust hue and saturation. I can put a hue and saturation adjustment layer on top of it. And I'm going to reduce the saturation just a little bit. There's not that much else that I want to do with this. I would recommend, especially if you have very old photos, going to the brightness and contrast adjustment layer is really useful. Especially if some photos are blurry, it does help increasing the contrast for it. So once you're okay with that, make sure to save your work. Okay. So that's for adjusting the casting, the color casting is on a photo. One more thing I wanted to show you was adding, let's see. I wanted to show you how to add color to a photo. It might be something that some of you might be interested in. So I'm gonna go ahead, duplicate this layer. And with adding colors, we are gonna be separating all parts of the photo that we wanna color. I'm gonna go to my quick selection tool. I'm gonna go to my quick selection tool and let's just start with separating the background from the subject. I have while my quick selection tool, while this is selected, I'm gonna increase the size just a little bit. Make a general selection of the background. And remember, you can refine your selection by, so you can refine your selection by holding Alt to subtract. So I don't want part of the subject in part of the background color. Undo. Okay. I think I'm okay with that. While that is selected, we're gonna access the submenu on top towards the right. Towards the right, click on select and mask. Turn on smart radius. I'll set the radius, I'll slide it to about 4. 4 or 5 is okay. I'll adjust the feathering to like 1. I'm at 1.1 and then hit OK. And what we want to do now, we're going to make a solid color adjustment layer. Going down to the half-filled circle icon, click on that and click on solid color. Now, depending on, so you want to choose what color you want for your background. And right now it is a solid color. But what we're gonna do is, if you go a little bit above, if you go a little bit above, so above the layers, you want to click on this drop down menu where it does say normal. That is the blending mode option.
Because it threw me off. Yeah. That's fine.
Okay, back to where else? So above the layers is where the blending mode selection is. You can change it from normal, and I'm gonna go to overlay. And now the background, the original background is visible now, except now with the added color. If you want to adjust the color, you can always double click on left, so left of the thumbnail of the adjustment layer. Let's just say I want to make it a little bit deeper. Hit OK. You can also reduce the opacity. So the opacity is right next to the blending mode, and you can adjust it to your liking. Really, it depends on how much color you really want saturated in your photo. And now I'm pretty satisfied with how the background looks. What I want to do now is add color to the subject's face and then the subject's shirt. So I'm going to repeat the same process. I select the background, and I'm going to go click on my second layer, go back to my second layer. So going back to the second layer, I have my selection tool. And I will select the face and neck. And again, you can refine it, adjust using the left and right brackets to change the size of the selection tool, holding Alt left click to delete parts of the selection. I don't want to include the shirt. Let me delete part of that. Okay. And again, going to the sub menu above it, select and mask. Turn on smart radius. And increase the feathering, hitting OK. And now going to the half-filled circle icon, we can add another solid color adjustment layer. Now for skin tones, you want to be hanging out in the reds. Anywhere, as long as it's in the reds, that's where you get your flesh tones from. I'll make it like that. And adjust the blending mode, going from normal to overlay. You can always change the color by double clicking. You can change the opacity as well. And then lastly, I will just show one last example of changing the shirt color. The general selection, then refine the selection. Okay. Might have to zoom in. A little bits that there are a few little bits that I want to get rid of. Okay, I think that's fine. That's fine. Let me zoom back out. While the selection tool, while that is still being selected, select a mask. Adjust the radius again. And feathering to 1.1, hit OK. Add a solid color adjustment layer. Let's just say I want to make it kind of bluish, blue greenish. Go to blending mode and then click on overlay. Sure. And then I'm reducing the opacity. And so far, what I've been able to color was the skin and then the shirt and background. There you go. Okay. Okay, so for this photo, all I can really color at most were those three things. You can always do more, like if you needed to color the hair, eyes, you essentially do the same thing, making sure that for each individual part of the photo, you want to be making a separate selection for it. And if you need to, you can always go back and make any adjustments. Okay. And then that will be it for now then. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'll be happy to repeat anything.
There's a chat. How do you get rid of the lines on the forehead?
Oh, so in my photo, the lines, okay. So I did not do any editing to this photo prior. What I would have done would have been the same thing that I did to this photo, where I used the blemish tool to get rid of any of the lines. Now for this one, you can use the blemish tool, I would say, like outside of the subjects, like and lines that are not basically crossing the subject's head. So for this, I think let me turn off the adjustment layer, it'll be easier to edit that way. You could possibly use the blemish tool to get rid of it. It can help. If it's starting to look a little bit muddy, then I would start painting it over then with the brush tool. But the details in this photo are not as complex, so you can actually go ahead and use the blemish tool or the spot healing brush tool you can use, and you can also use a healing brush tool, which allows you to sample it so it can match the rest of the photo. I hope that helps.
If you put the layer back on, let's see how the photo looks.
The layer back on.
The color back on, let's see how it
Colors.
looks.
Okay. Let's, okay, there.
Yeah,
So
it
a
looks
little bit.
better. Yeah. Looks better.
See. I wonder if I can just get rid of, it does kind of bother me.
Yeah,
Probably, yeah.
looks better. Make
Go
it,
back. Yeah, for the hair, I will probably have to use, I'd rather just sample it. It's starting to look a little bit weird when I use the regular one. Yeah, I think this is where you probably would have to just fill it in with a regular brush.
the
Yeah,
chat is still, the forehead looks crowded.
looks
Crowded. Yeah, it sort of does. It sort of looks better.
I didn't finish using the blemish tool on it, so it's, yeah, it still looks a little bit muddy.
Yeah.
But
then
that's what you would, that's what I essentially
You
would
have to
have
sit
done.
there with it all the time and just.
Yeah.
Do it.
And then the another question, how about an old sepia photo that is really faded? What is the best tool to help with that? A super faded photo. What you would want to do is see if you can bring up the contrast of the, if it's like faded and blurry, if that's what you mean. You want to make sure to bring up the contrast of the photo. This photo that I have here is already pretty blurry in and of itself. What I would also include is an adjustment layer where you can increase the brightness and contrast. And you can increase it. I would just be a little bit careful with it. And then back to being, if it's a very colored photo, an aged photo, kind of like how I did here, you would have a color balance adjustment layer where you can change the tones of, the image. If that helps.
Now, what if you got rid of the brightness on that one? How would that look? Because it seems really bright to me.
Yeah, this one looks like it's overexposed.
Yeah.
It's a little bit
that's what it looks
overexposed.
like.
So you can reduce the brightness.
Mhm. I think I like it better.
I wouldn't go too much on the contrast, but reduce the brightness.
Mhm.
There's also another adjustment layer where you can play around with the exposure. You could play with the sliding scale with the exposure here. There are
Oh,
a few there are a few different options. You can also play with levels, which also adjust the amount of lights and darks in your photo. So you have quite a few options there. Usually my go-to is like color. For color, hue, saturation, color balance. For adjusting the lights and darks, I usually go towards levels and the brightness and contrast. And I think there's a chat. Can we access Photoshop through the library? I don't know.
Yes, you'd have to, we have, I think they said that we have it new on the Mac laptops. So you'd have to go and with your library card and get a Mac laptop, and it has Photoshop on it. Also, yeah.
I was gonna say, do we have it in the media lab, in the media
Yes,
room?
but in the
Okay.
two media labs, right now you cannot use the audio lab, but you can use the video lab. You'd have to bring in your library card, and we have a Big Mac on there, and it has it in it too, so you could use it on there. But I heard yesterday that they said Photoshop was also on the Macs that we have here at the library. But let me make sure that's right.
Yeah.
Be back in a minute.
And then Annie, did you have anything else to say?
Yes, I just checked, and if you try to get a Mac, we'll loan you a Mac, and then Photoshop is on those too. So you can get a
Great.
laptop, or you can get the video lab has it on that too. So, yeah. Thank you for attending, everybody. We're gonna sign off now, so